Hello everyone and welcome back to more Magic the Gathering lore. As the battle over Zendikar's fate rages on, it's becoming obvious that blood alone cannot pay for the plane's freedom. As Gideon gores as many Eldrazi as he can, and Nissa Ravane searches for the very soul of the world, another just as equally important pilgrimage begins, the journey for knowledge. As of now, the champions of Zendikar know far too little about the opponent they face, the ever-spawning Eldrazi god, Ulamog. Gideon especially feels as if he's facing against a myth more so than an actual being. Up to this point, he and his forces haven't even put a dent in the Titan's brood. It's hard to fight against something which appears to have no weaknesses, and that you have basically no knowledge of. It's become very evident, to save Zendikar, they need more information. Luckily, Gideon had the foresight to bring along with him a fellow planeswalker who excels at learning and solving problems. He's been doing well solving the puzzles of the guilds on Ravnica so far. Perhaps Jace Beleren can put those talents to use against the Eldrazi. Gideon certainly didn't bring Jace to Zendikar for his fighting skills. Jace is a powerful mind mage and illusionist to be sure. Gideon certainly wouldn't want to face him in a conflict. But it's hard to trick and manipulate a race that doesn't think far past consume, like the Eldrazi. Jace's main job on Zendikar is to uncover the puzzle of the laylines, a phrase brought to Gideon's attention by a survivor of Seagate, a young female merfolk named Jori En. She worked closely with a researcher who believed, like other scholars at Seagate, that the Hedron connections throughout Zendikar could be used as a means of destroying the beasts for good. Unfortunately, most of the knowledge on the subject was lost with Seagate. That leaves most of the work up to Jace Beleren. Gideon has just returned to his ragtag collection of refugees after his brazen infiltration of the Lost City, in which he rescued Jori En. Gideon is quick to introduce the merfolk to his mental mage friend. Upon their introductions, Jace enters the mind of Jori En and witnesses the atrocities she experienced while at Seagate, but he also uncovers what the researchers had learned in their studies of the Hedrons. As Gideon appears, he asks about their progress. Jace reveals the next stage of their mission. He wishes to go to the Eye of Ugin, a place in the mountain of Akoum where the researchers believe the center of the Hedron network lied. Jace firmly understands that at this place, he'll unlock the mysteries of the Hedrons. Jori En is quick to agree. Gideon, on the other hand, is less optimistic. He believes that the journey would prove too dangerous for the pair. Jace counters, saying that he should join them, but Gideon's still setting up the refugee encampment. If he left, these survivors of the worst disaster to befall Zendikar wouldn't survive for much longer. Gideon continues to suggest that the camp needs all the help it can get. It can't afford to lose Jace and Jori En. Jace solemnly informs Gideon that the other planeswalker of the group, Nissa Ravane, had left the camp during the night. Gideon wasn't aware that Nissa was struggling with the loss of her friend, the spirit of Zendikar, and thus left in search of clues for its whereabouts. Jace eventually convinces Gideon to let the pair go to Akoum. Their fear is that in not making the journey could cost the lives of everyone on Zendikar. With Gideon's blessings, Jace and Jori En begin the long trek to the desolated Eye of Ugin. The first few miles were relatively clear, nothing but long expanses of white chalky nothingness, the distinctive sign of the Eldrazi. They were riding on a wagon pulled by a pair of large herda, pack animals that were brought to the camp by some of the refugees. The arrangements weren't comfortable by any means, but hey, at least they didn't have to walk. Their pleasant trip didn't last much longer, however, as a horde of smaller Eldrazi raced towards them from the other end of the long dirt road. Jace and Jori both jumped from the wagon as their speed was faster than either anticipated. Jace screamed for them to take cover, but in the vast wasteland, there was nothing that could hide a mouse, let alone the two full-grown adults. With little options, they hid behind the wagon. Before the spawns of Ulamog could swarm them, a mysterious core woman appeared to lend them a hand. She jumped on the back of one of the herda, and with a quick slice, cut through the animal's neck. The core told the pair to follow her, that the Eldrazi would consume the animal first, but their attention would soon fix on them again. Despite his caution, Jace and Jori En followed the core down the canyon face using her hooks and ropes. The core kept a quick pace, calling back to the pair to keep up. They were headed to the group's sanctuary. They'd be safe there. A feeling rolled over Jace. It just didn't feel right. It felt too perfect. In a world with so much dismay, how could it be that they were rescued by such a generous and mysterious core? Though he was happy to be alive, Jace kept an eye on his rescuer. As they reached the sanctuary, the chasm widened and the sky opened up overhead. The core stood in an open area, arms wide open facing the large figure of Zendikar's destruction, Ulamog. The Titan towered just over the horizon, gliding seamlessly on its tentacle appendages, facing towards them with its eyeless face. The air became heavy and unnatural, and the core welcomed them as offerings to the sanctuary of Ulamog, their god. The group called themselves the Eternal Pilgrims, fanatics who worshipped Ulamog as a god, leaving it offerings as a means of gaining its favor. Apparently, these cultists believed that Ulamog was still the god people once thought he was, Ula. Jace understood that while Ulamog certainly was godly in power, it was no more a god than was an earthquake or any other natural disaster. No offering could appease this titan, but the fanatics wouldn't listen to reason. While staring blankly at the form of Ulamog, Jace began to understand the simple nature of the Eldrazi. Its movements weren't governed by chance or by the whims of the wind. It searched out areas of large concentrations of energy, life. It's why its scions attacked Seagate and why it was following them now. Ulamog could sense where life was, no matter where it chose to hide. This revelation couldn't save them from their current situation, however. The cultists gathered around the pair, trapping them as they got closer. Jace screamed at them to stop, and one burst into flames. The man collapsed in screams as he frantically attempted to extinguish the fire. As Jace looked around the chasm, one after another, the cultists all began to engulf in flames. With the threat disposed of, the pair made their way out of the chasm, headed back from where they came. Jori En was confused at what just happened, attempting to understand how Jace could set fire to the group while not being a pyromancer. Jace only said that it was probably a good thing they didn't know that. With that, Jori En looked back to see the cultists padding and rolling around in the grass for no reason. The fire was imaginary, and so was the pain. It may not have killed them, but try telling the cultists that at the time. The pair made it back to their caravan, which was utterly destroyed by the Eldrazi. Without much provisions, Jori En started off on a hunt to gather what food she could. Before heading off, Jace quietly asked her to hear him out. It was obvious. Ulamog was headed towards Gideon and the rest of the camp. Someone had to go back to warn them. She suggested that he could just planeswalk there, but then he wouldn't be able to return since he wasn't sure of his surroundings. This plane was foreign to him after all. Since that wasn't a solution, Jori En said that they should both run back to the camp as fast as they could, warn the others, and prepare for the fight. Jace knew that a fight wouldn't accomplish anything. Someone had to go back to Gideon to warn them, but someone else had to continue to the Eye of Ugin. Its secrets were the only thing that could stand against Ulamog. The choice was clear. Jori En had to return to the camp. Jace was going to the Eye alone. Jori En protested, saying Jace wouldn't survive alone. She was probably right, but Jace had thought of all other possibilities, and this was the only one with a chance of working. Jori En continued to protest, but Jace's mind was already made up. Fearing what was coming, Jori En tried one more time to convince, and then she blacked out. She awoke only a day's trek away from Gideon's camp. She couldn't believe how fast she traveled without Jace slowing her down. She remembered saying goodbye to Jace after she convinced the mind mage that he should go to the Eye alone. Right? Her memory was foggy. She did convince him to go alone, didn't she? Yet something came to her. The last thing she said to Jace. Wait, Jace, no. Why would she say that? she slowly began to understand. He had erased her memory of their last encounter and planted in her mind that she, in fact, convinced him to go alone. Frustrated that Jace had manipulated her, she kicked a rock near her feet. There was nothing more she could do now. Jace was on his own, and she needed to head back to the others. The herald of their destruction headed towards them. Ulamog was coming. And that, my friends, is how the battle is playing out for Zendikar so far. Yeah, I know I'm a little behind on the story, but I promise to get more up to date about it. As we can see, Jace is flying solo on the rest of his journey to the Eye of Ugin, but judging by his past combat experiences, if he runs into more Eldrazi, he may find himself in more danger than he could imagine. Anyway guys, my question to you is, how do you feel Jace is being portrayed in the battle for Zendikar? Do you feel like he's actually underpowered in the story when compared to his character? Let me know in the comments below. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, consider throwing in a like and subbing to the channel. It goes a long way in supporting future content. You can also follow me on social media for more on the lore of Magic the Gathering. Find those links in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.